So what happens when a former US president decides to take on one of the biggest broadcasters on the planet? Well, we're about to find out. We're going to break down this incredible high-stakes clash between Donald Trump and the BBC, all because of a single edit in a documentary. And believe me, this has shaken the BBC to its very core. It's a story all about media, power, politics, and a billion-dollar threat.
And the story really kicks off with this just staggering number. $1 billion. Yeah, you heard that right. That is how much Donald Trump is threatening to sue the BBC for. I mean, it's a figure that's absolutely designed to grab headlines, and let me tell you, it worked.
So what could possibly be worth $1 billion? Well, it all boils down to what the BBC itself is calling an error of judgment. Just an error, and how they edited a speech from the former president. Think about that. One single error, and suddenly there's $1 billion price tag hanging over their heads. All right, let's dive into Section 1, the lawsuit itself.
Okay, so here's the lowdown. Trump's lawyers fired off a legal notice to the BBC about their famous Panorama documentary. And the core of their claim is this. They say the BBC deliberately, maliciously edited his speech to make it look like he was inciting violence. They didn't just complain, they gave him an ultimatum. Retract the whole thing by November 14th, or we'll see you in court.
Now, to really get what's going on here, we have to look at the edit itself. So let's break down exactly what the BBC put on the air. And this all goes back to one of the most talked about, most scrutinized days in recent American history, right? January 6, 2021. The whole controversy, literally everything, hinges on how the BBC decided to edit Trump's speech from that day, the one he gave right before his supporters marched on the U.S. Capitol. And this is where it gets really interesting. Look at this side by side. On the left, you see what Trump actually said. He told his supporters to demonstrate peacefully. But on the right, in the BBC's version, that word, peacefully, is just gone, completely omitted. That one little word is the absolute heart of this whole billion-dollar fight. So you're probably asking, how did this even happen? Well, it wasn't just a simple snip, no. The BBC actually took 3 separate quotes and spliced them together, and get this, they were from 2 totally different parts of the speech, delivered almost an hour apart. By stitching them together, they created what sounded like one single continuous statement, and it sounded a whole lot more aggressive. Yeah, an edit like that, you just know it's going to have consequences. And that brings us to the absolute chaos and fallout inside the BBC. And man, this thing just spiraled. It unfolded like something out of a TV show. First, the edit airs and bam, the backlash starts. But then, things go from bad to worse. A supercritical internal report gets leaked to the press, and it exposes some really deep concerns they had internally. And this leak, it directly leads to the resignations of the 2 top dogs at the BBC, the Director General, Tim Davie, and the news chief, Deborah Turnus. I mean, we're talking a complete leadership meltdown. So with their top leadership just gone, the new BBC chair, Samir Shah, had to step up and make a public apology. And he didn't try to sugarcoat it. He straight up called the edit an error of judgment. That's a huge deal. It's a clear admission right from the very top that they messed up. Big time. But here's the kicker. The problem was bigger than just this one edit. That leaked report that took down the leadership, it didn't just talk about Trump. It also slammed the BBC's coverage of other really sensitive topics, like the Israel-Gaza war and transgender issues. So this suggests it wasn't just a one-off mistake, but maybe a much bigger problem with how they were doing things. Okay, so the BBC admitted they made a mistake. That sounds like a slam dunk case for Trump, right? Well, not so fast. This is where we enter the legal battleground, and things get complicated. See, in the US, it is incredibly hard for a public figure to win a defamation lawsuit. It's not enough to just say, hey, what you published was false. Nope. You have to prove that the publisher knew it was false and went ahead and published it anyway. They call this actual malice in the courts. It basically means you have to show they had a reckless disregard for the truth and wanted to cause harm. And that, my friends, is a very high bar to clear. But Trump's legal team has a strategy. They're arguing that this isn't just one mistake. It's part of a pattern of media distortion. And they've been pushing this idea. In fact, it's interesting to note that several other huge American media companies like CBS and ABC News have actually decided to settle lawsuits from Trump recently instead of taking it all the way to court. So, when you step back from all the lawyers and the resignations, you realize this is about something much bigger. This whole thing really hits at the core of a huge issue: public trust in journalism. Even the British government had to weigh in, and you can tell they chose their words very carefully. The Prime Minister's office came out and defended the BBC as an institution, saying they didn't think it was institutionally biased or corrupt. But in the very same breath, they had to admit the obvious, stating that clearly mistakes have been made. And what about the BBC's defense? Well, their new leadership is basically saying, look, we failed to live up to our own high standards here. The chair, Samir Shah, is insisting that their core mission, their DNA, as he puts it, is still to be impartial and trustworthy, even as they're dealing with this massive, very public screw-up. And that really leaves us with a big question, doesn't it? In this crazy, fast-paced world of news we live in, with constant deadlines and pressure to create a narrative, where do you draw the line? Where does a serious but honest editorial error cross over into becoming a deliberate distortion? That, right there, is the billion-dollar question at the heart of this whole firestorm.